Cerule is now offering a BOGO sale on their premier item only, Stem Enhance Ultra, probably the most effective human body repair supplement ever discovered. Why? Because in 1 hour it can increase your blood levels of adult stem cells by nearly 50%. There is no other supplement that has ever made this claim. See the link below for more info.
When I return to the White House, we will stop the plunder, rape, slaughter, and destruction of our American suburbs and cities and towns. We're going to stop it. We will shut down deadly sanctuary cities. I will shift massive portions of federal law enforcement to immigration enforcement. We will close up our border, and we want people to come in, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in legally. And on day one, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. We have no choice. And as I say, and I say it all the time, and I already said it to you, no one has been hurt more by the Biden invasion than our great African American and Hispanic American populations. Under Crooked Joe, 109% of all net job creation over the last year has gone to migrants. Did you know that? Almost every job that was created has gone to migrants. In fact, more than every job. It's crushing wages for American workers, draining resources for American citizens, and stealing American jobs. And they are stealing them at levels that nobody's ever seen before. Joe Biden wants to be the president for illegal aliens, but I will be the president for law-abiding Americans of every background, every walk of life, and every race, religion, color, and creed. Joe Biden's job numbers are fake. They're fake numbers, and the fake media knows it, but they don't look at all of them back there. Oh, that's a lot, Marco. That's a lot, Marco. I think they probably think I'm going to be announcing that Marco's going to be vice president. I don't know. Because that's a lot of press. That's a lot of press. They're also overwhelmingly part-time jobs, which really means that they're second jobs of people who are struggling to get by. They're being taken by the illegal migrants that are coming into our country in these record numbers. We've never seen anything. It is indeed an invasion. When I return to the White House, I will once again be the greatest jobs president that God has ever created. And like we had 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we will have full-time jobs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. We had the greatest economy in the history of the planet. Well-paying jobs and jobs that can support a home and a family very, very easily. We had it all. As everyone knows, the Biden economy is a nightmare for working families under Crooked Joe. Inflation, price hikes, and they've cost, listen to this, $28,000. $28,000. And you know, under Trump, you made $14,000. That's a big swing. Under Biden and Harris, half of Americans are not taking a vacation at all this summer because they can't afford to do it. Most say it's because the cost of daily life is so high, no matter what they make, they can't. Because, you know, they like to say 20%, 29%, 26%, 31%. I think your inflation, your real inflation, is way over 50%, and I believe that. Meanwhile, Crooked Joe has spent almost 50% of his presidency on vacation. Almost all of it, including many, many weeks on the beach. And mansions are in, think of this. Here's a guy that's been a politician all his life. He's got homes in the Virgin Islands, Nantucket, Lake Tahoe, Kiowa Island. I mean, where the hell did they get all this money, Byron? He's got more homes than I do. What the hell is going on with him? And that home he's got in Delaware is pretty nice, right? But remember, they said it was his son's home. You know, his son is running it, right? You know that, right? You know that. He's running our government. And Jill is helping. Jill is helping. Where's Hunter? Remember the sign, where's Hunter? Where's Hunter? He's in the White House. Hunter is in the White House running government right now, they say. That's interesting. No wonder Joe doesn't want to give up the job. His own staff says that the only hours he works are 10 a.m. to 4. Does anybody here have a job like that? Raise your hand, please. And I doubt he even spends that. And today he's with the people from NATO. And these people are sharp. I know them very well, every one of them. They're very smart. They're at the top of their game. And they're saying, what the hell is with this guy? We can't figure it out. You know, I saved NATO because when I went down, hey, Barack Hussein Obama, has anyone ever heard of him? He would go and, you know, go to wherever they're holding the NATO meeting, and he'd make a nice speech and he'd leave. And Bush would go and make a nice speech and he would leave, in all fairness. Bush, oh yeah. But he'd make a nice speech and he'd leave. They'd all go make speeches and they'd leave. They wouldn't even stay there a day. I went and didn't make a nice speech. I said, what the hell are you doing? Nobody's paying. Nobody was paying. But I didn't want to be obnoxious because I felt, you know, it's the first time I'd ever done this. I went. I didn't even know what the hell NATO was too much before, but it didn't take me long to figure it out, like about 2 minutes. And the first thing I figured out was they weren't paying. We were paying. We were paying almost fully for NATO. And I said, that's unfair, but I didn't want to make a big mess. You know, I was president for about 15 minutes. And I didn't want to, you know, go after NATO as my first thing. But 6 months later, I went back to the second meeting, and I said, you know what? You're not paying your bills. You got to pay your bills. Somebody stood up from one of the countries, 28 countries, and only 7 were paying what they should be paying. 28 countries, think of that. And these countries, now we added a couple, but 28 countries. And they said, sir, could I ask you, I said, you have to pay your bills. They said, sir, may I ask you a question? If we don't pay our bills, will you protect us from Russia? I said, you mean you're delinquent? They said, yes, we're delinquent. Let's say we're delinquent. Would you protect us? I said, no, I will not protect you from Russia. The money came in by the billions. It came in. There's never been, right? There has never been. Where's Waltz? Where's Congressman Waltz? Am I correct, Mr. Guy? This guy loves the military. He gets sick when he looks at what we're doing, but he loves it. Is that right? I got billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars came pouring in because he said, oh, this guy's a little different than the other guys. But Joe Biden is a part-time president while you are working overtime to get by. He's a part-time president. He doesn't work. Well, he can't work because he's mentally no good. He's shot. But he was shot 25 years ago. You know, he was never a smart person. In fact, Ted Kennedy was actually a friend of mine. Can you believe it? Because of Palm Beach. He lived in Palm Beach. The Kennedy compound, for those that think the Kennedys are struggling, they had the Kennedy compound, but I did him a favor, and he liked me, and I was very good to him, actually. And I said to him, Ted, let me ask you a question. Who's the smartest senator? Tell me. And he gave me a name, but I won't say it because I can't stand the guy, okay? I'll tell you later, Marco, who he said. It wasn't you because you weren't there yet, so it can't be. But I said, who's the smartest? He gave me a name. I said, so who's the dumbest? He goes, probably Joe. This is like 20 years ago, 20-something years ago. Probably Joe. I said, who's Joe? He said, Joe Biden. I said, really? He's a dumb guy? Yeah, he didn't understand policy. He didn't understand tax. He didn't understand anything. He's hale and hearty and well-met. And outside of his really bad hair, he's, you know, sort of a good-looking guy at the time, right? I think the facelift did not help him. No, he said, I'm going to get myself a facelift. I'm going to give it one more try. You know, he tried it 3 or 4 times. Didn't work. He tried it 3 or 4 times. Then he said, I'm going to look great. I'm going to get a facelift. You know what took him so long to get into the race? The facelift didn't work. Under my leadership, we will make America affordable again so that every American family can afford to take a thing called a vacation. Isn't that nice? And on day one, we will throw out Bidenomics and replace it with a thing called MAGA-nomics. We will quickly build the greatest economy in the history of the world. I will repeal every disastrous Biden regulation, of which there are many. Cancel Crooked Joe's insane electric vehicle mandate. How stupid. And we will drill, baby, drill. We're going to drill like we never drilled before. We were energy independent 4 years ago. Think of it. We're going to be energy dominant within months. 4 years ago, energy independent. I will deliver large tax cuts, larger than you even have now. Do you know, I tell the story to people. It's hard to believe. I reduced taxes, the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. I reduced them bigger than the Reagan tax cuts many years ago. And with a lower rate, the following year, we took in much more tax money. Think of it. So we're getting much less. That meant for small businesses, large businesses, because that's what the job creators are, for middle-income people, low-income people, everybody. And he wants to let that expire. And if you do, your taxes are going to go up about 5 times, 4 times to 5 times more. How would you feel if they raise your taxes by 4 or 5 times? Not too. And remember that when you're going into the voting booth, do I want to have a terrible president who has no idea where the hell he is? And less importantly, do I want to pay 4 times more tax? And remember, what I'm going to do is something that nobody's ever even thought about doing. No tax on tips. For all of you waitresses, for all of you caddies at Doral. You know, I came to Doral, and there were some caddies at the shack. We call it Caddy Shack. It's the most beautiful caddy shack I've ever seen. We have the world's most beautiful. They sit down and watch television. And I never had this before. They were out for a round. They're very sweaty, very, very sweaty guys. You know, look, they're carrying bags all over the place. Not easy. It's 100 degrees out today, 103, 104. And they saw me, and they gave me the biggest hug. I said, get the hell out of here. You're soaking wet. I said, why do you like me so much today, but in the past you never touched me and kissed me and hugged me? It's very simple, sir. No tax on tips. We have to get back to the business at hand. Is it too hot for anybody? No, not bad. Once you get used to the fact that you're soaking wet, from the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden, I believe we are going to have the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, shortly after we, all of us together, win the presidency, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled, and I will prevent our nation, and we will prevent the whole world from entering World War III, because that's where we are. We're very close to World War III, and Biden doesn't have a clue. We should have never allowed, if you think about it, Russia, Ukraine would have never happened. October 7th, the attack on Israel would have never happened. Inflation would have never happened. Think of our country if the election wasn't rigged. Think of it. Think where we'd be if they didn't rig that election. So we're not going to let it happen again, because our country won't exist. It would be I believe it would be the last election we've ever had if anything happened. I really believe it. We're not going to let that happen. You got to get out and vote. If I was president, though, and think of it, Afghanistan, one of the most embarrassing moments in the history of our country, would also never have happened. It would have never happened. You know, Ukraine, when you think Ukraine, I had a very good relationship with Putin. We talk about it. It was the apple of his eye. Would have never happened. I told him, can't do it. You're not going to do it. October 7th, the attack on Israel, I knew it so well. They had no money because the purveyor of funds was Iran, and Iran was broke. They had all sorts of sanctions. Nobody could buy. China couldn't buy. China was a massive buyer of oil from Iran. I said, if you buy from Iran, you can't do business in the United States. And they did very well in the United States. And they didn't buy nobody, but Iran was broke. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. And we had no terror. You know, I always wanted to talk about it when I was president. I was 3 years in, 3.5 years in. I said, I want to just brag a little bit. I want to say that we had no terror. There were no terror attacks in 4 years, but I wanted to brag about it. But I wanted to wait till I got out, and now I brag about it all the time. We had very few terrorists allowed into our country. We had a year, 2019, where the charts come out, how many terrorists enter the country. Now, I think they're wrong because I can't believe it, but they actually had no terrorists. 0 terrorists came in 2019. That was a Trump year. Now we have thousands and thousands of terrorists pouring into our country from all over the world, and they're the worst terrorists in the world. They're the biggest and the worst, and we got them living in our country. They actually put down 2019, Trump, No terrorists, zero. I don't believe that, but that's what they have. And that was done by Border Patrol and others, State Department. I'll take it. I don't believe it, but it was very close to nothing. And they actually have zero terrorists came into our country. We were tough on it. And we would not have Russian warships and nuclear submarines surrounding Cuba 60 miles off our coast. You know that, right? For all of you people in Cuba, congratulations. You're now being protected by Russia. Congratulations. Can you imagine that the press, the fake news, those people, they don't even talk about it. We have nuclear submarines and 5 warships in Cuba, and they don't even talk about it. If that happened to me as president, it would be the biggest story every single day. But they don't talk about it because they're fake and corrupt news. When I was in the White House, I canceled Barack Hussein Obama's deal with the Cuban dictatorship and reimposed tough sanctions on that regime. They were ready to break. They were all set, and then we had the election taken away, robbed, rigged. Joe Biden has gone weak and soft on Cuban communists, as you know better than anybody, so many of you here. And he's abandoned the brave Cuban dissidents while the Cuban people are suffering, starving, and dying. In Cuba, would have been all solved very quickly. As president, I will again stand with the people of Cuba in their long quest for justice, liberty, and freedom. In my next term, we will build a great iron dome over our country, a dome like has never been seen before. A state-of-the-art missile defense shield that will be entirely made in the USA, right here in your state, right here in Florida. We'll build a big section. You have a lot of defense. We moved a lot of companies into Florida for defense purposes. I will not cut 1 penny from Social Security or Medicare, and I will not raise the retirement age by 1 day. Biden is going to do that because he's allowing these people that come in to go on to Social Security and Medicare, to go into the hospitals. And, we want to be nice. But no country can sustain this. No country can sustain it. I kept that promise for 4 straight years, and I will keep it again. We have plenty of other resources. We're not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. If the millions of Biden migrants became citizens, Medicare and Social Security will be gone. They'll be gone. They'll be gone. We're going to rebuild our cities into beacons of hope, safety, and beauty better than they have ever, ever, ever been before. We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C., and clean it up, renovate it, and rebuild our capital city so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime, but rather it will become the most beautiful capital anywhere in the world. Right now, if you leave Florida, let's go, darling. Let's look at the Jefferson Memorial. Let's look at the Washington Monument. Let's go and look at some of the beautiful scenes, and you end up getting shot, mugged, raped. We're going to take over our capital, and we're going to run it tough and smart, and we're going to beautify it. We're going to get all the graffiti off the marble. We're going to fix the roads and the medians, which are falling down all over the streets. We're going to make our capital beautiful again. We're going to do the same thing with our cities, even though Democrat run. We're going to work with Democrat governors and mayors if we have to. On day 1, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children. And I will not give 1 penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. And I will keep men out of women's sports. Can you imagine? Can you imagine even having to say that? I will fully uphold the Second Amendment. We will protect innocent life, and we will restore free speech in our country. And I will secure our elections once and for all. Our goal will be 1 day voting with paper ballots, proof of citizenship, and voter ID. Very simple. But until then, Republicans must win. You must get out and vote. We want a landslide, and let's call it this: too big to rig. Too big to rig. Thank you. Look at all the front row Joes. Oh, wow. Wow, They've been to like 200 rallies. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you. Great. It's a great honor. These are real patriots. They make a lot of money, I guess, because they're at every rally. I go to California, I have a rally, I have the front row Joes there. If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States and added them up, they would not have done near the destruction to our country as Joe Biden and the Biden administration has done. Think of it. I used to say 5, remember? 6 months ago, I'd say 5 worse. I added 10. I could go higher than that. There's nobody that's done destruction to our country. And now we find out he probably doesn't even know he did it, okay? Joe, why did you do it? I did what did I do? So if you want to save America, get your friends, get your family, get everyone you know and vote. You got to vote early, vote absentee, vote on election day, vote anytime you want, but vote and follow your vote. Make sure that it gets counted. You can do that. Follow that vote because these people cheat like nobody's ever cheated before. Frankly, they're no good at policy, but they're good at cheating. And if you want to help us ensure election integrity, sign up at protectthevote.com.